I give you the train ticket? And she said, right before we get on the train. And he said, exactly. When the time comes for you to suffer for Christ, you will have the strength you need. He will give you the grace right when you need it. He's not going to give it to you when you're a 7-year-old girl, because he hasn't called you to be in the concentration camp as a 7-year-old girl. He'll give it to you when you need it. Corrie ten Boom said, worry does not empty tomorrow of its sorrow. It empties today of its strength. This is one of the biggest tactics the enemy uses on us as women, is to rob today, to rob us from being fully present for what God has for us today, the work that he has called us to today, because we are preoccupied with future worries. We are preoccupied with what might happen in the future. Like Elizabeth Elliot says, today's care, not tomorrow, is the responsibility given us, a portion to the wisdom of God. Often we neglect the thing assigned for us for the moment because we're preoccupied with something that is not our business just now. How easy it is to live with half our attention, only half our attention, to someone who needs us, because whether it be our husbands or our children or other people in our life that we're called to, because the other half is focused on a future worry. So here's some practical ways that I have found really helpful for me in working through this. First of all, praying specific prayers together as a family, like I talked about last night. Letting my children see my faith even during trials, to realize this is not the end of the story. God is walking us through something, and everything that we are walking through right now that is a struggle has an end and it has a purpose, and we're going to watch God redeem it, to keep that perspective and to let my kids see that perspective, and to celebrate answered prayer. To say, look what God has done. When you celebrate answered prayer, it causes your mind to get off your future worries and focus on how faithful God really is. Allow your children to walk through this with you, because the enemy starts very young with our kids in getting them to be obsessed and preoccupied with fear and future worry. Let them see by example how you walk through this with confidence and faith, remembering what a mighty God that you serve. Remember that love is a choice and not just a feeling. This is another way that we can replace emotional responses with truth-filled responses. Now, when it comes to family and loving our children, loving our husbands, it's interesting, because when we're young, we're getting married and we're engaged, it's like we envision the beautiful side of family and marriage and Prince Charming that we're getting married to. But when you're actually married, there's a lot of tedious, everyday things that are pretty unglamorous about family life, and there are a lot of sacrifices. There are a lot of giving up of your own personal rights and space. And if you constantly base your love for your spouse or your love for your children on your feelings, then your home life is going to be an emotional roller coaster ride. But if it's first and foremost a choice and a commitment to love that person or love those people as God has loved you, the feelings come and go, and God will give the feelings and the emotions towards your family or towards people that God has called you to love. But don't base it on your feelings. So with Reese and Lily, there are a lot of times it's hard to transition a 2-3-year-olds into a home that's already so busy and life is already so intense, especially when they're doing things like shoving toys down the toilet and carving up benches and doing things that it's very inconvenient. It's like, why did we adopt a 3-year-old? Why didn't we adopt like a 10-year-old who wouldn't shove toys down the toilet? And just things like that can be that bait. Even after seeing what God has done in bringing them home, it can be that bait to just be frustrated with the struggles of just having 2-3-year-olds. But to realize that my love for them is first and foremost based on a covenant, a commitment before God, not just feelings. The feelings will come as I am obedient to the commitment God has called me to make. And I've seen that happen time and time and time again. Corrie ten Boom, when she was released from the concentration camp, her sister had died, most of her family had died because of the Nazis. And she was speaking in Germany, and she was talking about the power of God's love. And at the end of her session, this man who came up to her that she recognized, but he didn't recognize her. He had been one of the cruelest guards in the concentration camp where her sister had died. And he was extending her hand and saying, your message meant so much to me that God can forgive even me. And she needed to take his hand, but she couldn't do it. And so she began to pray, because all the feelings, all of the despair, all of the darkness of that time came flooding back. And she realized this man is literally one of the men responsible for her sister's death. How could she reach out and shake his hand and forgive him and be friends with him? And she said, God, I don't feel anything as far as love and forgiveness towards this man, but I'm going to take the step of obedience. I reach my hand out and you'll supply the feeling. And that's exactly what happened. As she took that step of obedience, God flooded her supernaturally with an overwhelming love and compassion for this man. So the key truth is that becoming a joyful mother begins with a choice and not a feeling. I often have to remind myself that choosing a joyful attitude and feeling happy emotions are two very different things. I've learned I cannot wait for my emotions to cooperate before taking the step to give thanks in all circumstances. Rather, I must choose to obey God no matter how I'm feeling, and then my emotions will follow suit. We can't consult our emotions or wait for the warm, fuzzy feelings before we obey God and choose to embrace the supernatural joy that He offers.